All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really dense, influential, and, let's be honest, often controversial text from 2013 called the #Accelerate Manifesto. Now, our goal here isn't to endorse it or to tear it down, but simply to break down its core arguments so you can understand what it's really all about.
So, right out of the gate, the manifesto hits you with this line. The authors, Alex Williams and Nick Srnicek, aren't being literal, of course. What they're getting at is that our collective imagination, our ability to even picture a future that's fundamentally different from right now, has just completely stalled out. Okay, so to really get what they're saying, you first have to understand the problem they're trying to solve. They paint a picture of a world that's facing a whole new kind of crisis, a series of interlocking disasters that are all picking up speed at the same time. They connect a bunch of different crises that might seem separate, planetary climate breakdown, running out of critical resources, the lingering financial crisis, jobs being automated away. But the key thing here is they're not just saying, oh, these are all separate bad things happening. The argument is that this is all evidence that our core systems are fundamentally broken. And this brings us to what they see as the absolute core of the problem. It's like while all these crises are hitting the accelerator, our political systems are just stuck in neutral. They seem totally paralyzed, completely unable to come up with any new ideas to tackle these huge global issues. So the big question is, why are we so stuck? Well, the manifesto argues it's because the main political players, both the dominant ideology and its primary opposition, are totally failing us.
Okay, so on one side, you've got neoliberalism. This has been the main game in town for decades, right? All about free markets. The authors say it just can't solve the very crises it helped create. And then on the other side, they take aim at what they called the traditional left. They see it as being trapped in nostalgia, wishing for a return to an old industrial past, or focusing on really small-scale local actions that just can't stand up to massive global problems. So if the old ways are broken, if the old politics just don't work anymore, what's the alternative? And this is where we get to the real heart of the manifesto, the part that gets a lot of people talking and is, frankly, often misunderstood. All right, so let's get into it. This is where we talk about accelerationist politics. Now, this is where the manifesto gets its name, but it's really, really important to understand what they actually mean by acceleration, because it's probably not what you're thinking. So what exactly is accelerationism? Well, interestingly, the first thing the manifesto does is tell you what it isn't. They say it's not about just mindlessly speeding up the current system, hoping the whole thing will crash and burn. No, it's a much more specific, strategic idea. They draw a really sharp line in the sand here. There's capitalist speed, which they describe as just doing more of the same, but faster. Think about the endless cycle of slightly better smartphones. It's just motion without any real direction. But acceleration, in their view, is something totally different. It's about navigating, experimenting, trying to find a path to a whole new destination beyond the limits of our current map. And this is a really critical point in their argument. They're arguing against this idea that you have to smash everything and start from scratch. Instead, they say, look at all this incredible infrastructure that capitalism has built. Global supply chains, financial networks, the internet. Let's not destroy it. Let's use it as a springboard to launch somewhere new. And to back this up, they pull out a quote from a pretty surprising source, Lenin. The point they're making is that you can't build a super complex, advanced future using primitive tools. You have to take the most advanced systems we have, the ones capitalism created, and master them for different ends. Okay, so that's the big idea, the theory. But what's the actual plan? How do you do any of this? Well, the manifesto doesn't just stop at philosophy. It lays out what it considers a concrete strategy for making this happen. Okay, first things first. They totally reject the idea that a new, better world is just going to, magically appear after some kind of big collapse. They're pretty clear. A post-capitalist future has to be deliberately planned and designed. So, how do you start that planning? They lay out 3 big medium-term goals. First, you got to build a new intellectual infrastructure, basically a new common sense with new economic models and a new vision for what a good society looks like. Second, massive media reform to get that message out. And third, you have to build a new kind of political force by uniting all the fragmented, precarious workers of the modern world. And to actually pull this off, they argue that the political left needs a major upgrade. It has to get fluent in modern tech. We're talking about tools like big data analytics, complex economic modeling, And they're saying you can't just see these things as evil corporate tools. You have to see them as essential instruments for understanding a really complex world and for changing it.
So what this all boils down to is a goal they call socio-technical hegemony. It's a fancy term, but the idea is pretty simple. It's about winning a battle on two fronts at the same time. You have to win the war of ideas, but you also have to gain mastery over the actual material platforms, the infrastructure that runs our world.
All right, so all of this, the critique, the theory, the strategy, it's all building towards their ultimate vision for the future. And it's a big one, maybe the most ambitious part of the whole text. It's about reclaiming the very idea of modernity.
Now, here's where they make a really provocative claim. They say that capitalism, far from being this great engine of progress, is now actually holding us back. It channels all our innovation into these narrow, profitable little boxes while letting the truly big, world-changing possibilities just die on the vine.
And this really gets to the core of their optimism, in a way. They truly believe that the science and technology we already have holds this enormous untapped potential. If you could just free it from the need to make a short-term profit, they argue, you could unleash it to solve our biggest problems and create a radically different world. So you see, the final goal here isn't about going back in time. It's not about nostalgia. It's about accelerating towards a future that is way more modern, a totally different kind of modernity that they believe our current system just isn't capable of delivering.
And they don't pull any punches when it comes to the stakes. They frame it as a pretty severe choice. For them, this is not just some academic game. It's an urgent, make-or-break choice between building a new kind of global civilization or just watching everything slowly fall apart. But in the end, the manifesto doesn't pretend to have it all figured out. It ends less like a blueprint and more like a provocation. It's really a call to action, a call to stop believing that the future is just canceled and to start the incredibly hard work of actually designing and building a new one. And that leaves us all with the huge open question, okay, but how?